Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Cooper, ELL teacher in Fayette County Public Schools. This PowerPoint presentation is to serve as a professional development to you classroom teachers. It was created by Fayette County Public Schools, and we just want to clarify some of the questions you all have had about prompting and cueing notebooks. Of course, this is an accommodation that many ELL students use. They can use them throughout the school year, but most importantly can use them on assessments and state assessments. Prompting and cueing notebooks, many of you have questions about whether what your kids are using are acceptable or not. The things that we want you to remember are they have to be child specific. Can't be something that's generated for just generic use. They have to be consistent with the needs of that student. And when we talk about being personal and not generic, that just means that you're not creating things yourself and having them copy them down just as a general use for the whole class. They have to be student initiated. The students have to know when they're going to need to ask for their prompting and cueing notebooks, when they see a question on a test, where they're going to have to flip to find that information. You cannot be there assisting them with it. And no core content information can be included into the notebooks. So here's an example of something that you may see in a notebook. You can see that the Venn diagram used here was probably given to the student. I don't think they drew those circles perfectly themselves. They're basically just showing what's going to go in each part of the diagram, things that are different and things that are like. And you can see it was student created. This is an acceptable use of prompting and cueing. Okay, take a look at this example. All right. Label animal habitats. The Venn diagram has land, habitats, water. Acceptable or not acceptable? What do you think? Well, it's not acceptable. And the reason is it's showing content. You cannot have something like this in there because, that would be possibly showing an answer to a test. Okay, using spam for students when they're using on-demand writing. This is student written, acceptable or not? Yes, it is. Okay, this is just a way for students to remember what they need to do when they get to on-demand writing. It does not have any content inside of it. Okay, here are some notes that look like they've been taken in a math class. Acceptable or not? Yes, it is. None of this is giving specific content. Again, this is just to help the student remember how they're going to use Pythagorean theorem. Okay, things such as this, acceptable or not acceptable? No, and of course by now you probably understand it's got too much content in it. You are giving actual answers to addition and multiplication problems. Okay, is this acceptable or not acceptable? And this is a tricky one because it actually is acceptable. Students can use a multiplication table such as this because they're having to actually manipulate and utilize the information here. It's not just directly given. So this is actually not considered a content stem. This is an example of something that would be acceptable because it's telling how they're going to get to their answer when they use an ORQ. So they're going to restate the prompt and all that. And they've written that down, looks like from notes probably the teacher has told them some of those things in the classroom. So again, when we're talking about student initiated, the student would have to remember, oh, well, when I'm given this ORQ today, I need to be able to look back in my notebook and look at my paper on ORQs to see what I need to do. It's not something that you could see the students getting the ORQ incorrect and say, oh, well, why don't you look in your prompting and cueing notebook at that ORQ page? Because then that's teacher guided. Acceptable or not acceptable? Oh, hopefully you've said not acceptable. Way too much content being given here. 4-column method chart. Acceptable. Many posters such as this, not acceptable. Why? Because this isn't a student-created piece of information. Even though this is part of something they could use if they had written some of these content pieces down, it isn't something that they could use because it looks like was printed directly from a book or taken from a book and put into their notebook. This again would be an acceptable piece. These would be acceptable pieces. Okay? When we look at definitions and examples, such as this, what do you think? Acceptable or not acceptable? It is acceptable. The student is simply writing down things that would help them remember these properties, and it's not specific to the content. Acceptable or not acceptable? This is an example of something that would be unacceptable. Okay? You're telling the associative property and the commutative property and the distributive property. But the difference between this and the prior slide is that this is not a student-created piece. This looks like something that a teacher has given to them, and again, it wouldn't show that the student actually had the knowledge of it in the first place to put it into their notebook. Okay, KWL charts, anything that's like this would be an acceptable piece because it's just a graphic organizer. Blank graphic organizers are perfectly okay, even when it's something that is created not by the student. As long as it's blank without the information on it, it's totally fine. I hope that everyone's looking at this going, absolutely no way would I let my student put this into their reference notebook. A food chain, again, unacceptable, clearly showing content. I hope that this screencast has helped clear up any misconceptions you have had about the reference notebooks used for your ELL students. If you do have any further questions, please feel free to direct those to my email address located here on the screen. If I can't answer them, I'll find someone who will. Thank you so much, and good luck with your notebooks.